Megavanan and welcome my friends to Elven Awakenings, chatting with the Elven Scholar. And now, to your guide to all things Elvish, Dr. Erendil Spindelellis, the Elven Scholar.
Once upon a time in a forest rich in pine and oak lived a young elf. He lived amongst his neighbors who were clothed in fur and feather, and found joy and peace with each sunrise, and silence in the evening light of the stars. He spent his days communing with his woodland brothers and sisters, and the nights in contemplation and meditation. Light shone upon him unstained from the mortal world, and he was happy. But as time passed, he became more aware of the land outside, filled with fear and despair, and he knew his time of living in the gentle woods was coming to an end, and his journey as a teacher was upon him. When the morning sun found him again, he walked out of the forest with nothing but the clothes on his back and strode into the land of man, to teach and to be taught. For it is the way of all teachers, that the student so often will be the better master. This is my story, and it is true. My name is Erendil, and I am the Elven Scholar. Life is indeed a learning game. Megovan and my elven, fae, and otherkin family. Today I'd like to talk to you about the subject of the old soul from an elven perspective. But before I get into the show, I just wanted to do my weekly announcement for the contest that we do, and that is the word of the hour or the phrase. The word or phrase today is Bill the Pony. So during the show, if you hear the phrase Bill the Pony, be the first to call into the show at 442-227-2187. That's 442-227-2187. The first to hear the phrase Bill the Pony and calls in gets a month free with the online school Lambengolmor, the Elven School Lore Masters. It is a full online certified school where you can study to be an herbalist or even a medical herbalist, nutritionist, Reiki master, anatomy, even first aid and such, laws of manifestation. So the first to call in, you win a month free, and you can study as many of those classes as you'd like. This is a smaller selection of the classes that are available at the school, so those who are currently subscribed cannot participate because you'd be getting less than what you were already paying for. But this particular contest gives you access to about 5 of the most important classes. So be the first to call in, and you win a month's free subscription to it, and you can do as many of those classes as you'd like during that month. Okay, back to the show. The elven soul as an old soul. I imagine probably quite a number of you out there are already familiar with what an old soul is. But the reason I'm doing this episode today is I've had a number of viewers and listeners talking to me or mentioning about how they feel about themselves. I really wanted to talk about how to perceive ourselves from a general point of view. So many of those in the elven culture and community have just begun the process of reawakening. And in that process, we have a tendency sometimes to look back at our past and feel pretty bad about ourselves. Or maybe you feel bad about yourselves today because we're not as far progressed as we should be. Why aren't we more evolved? And so I wanted to talk about that for a little bit today. The old soul from the perspective of an elven insight. The elven old soul. How old is your soul? What makes one person wise behind their years and another young at heart? What makes one person awaken to the desire for spiritual fulfillment and another person to the desire to content themselves with material gain and social status? I believe the answer is the age, or more appropriately probably put, is the level of development of their soul. All right, with that in mind, let's go ahead and talk about exactly what is an old soul, and then I'll kind of give you my perspective on how I came up with this in the first place. Old souls are people who are conscious of the soul's existence and are actively working to reconnect with it again. In this sense, the term old soul is metaphorical rather than literal, indicating a matured and ripened relationship with the soul, or your true self. A young soul, on the other hand, is a person who hasn't yet experienced a deep connection with their souls or their higher selves. they remain like a young flower bud, tight and closed. Now, you might think that, well, everyone must be trying to do that because surely we're all aware of our souls. And it is true that many, many people are aware that they have souls, but it's actually very unfortunate and very rare to find those who are actively trying to reconnect with it or to reawaken. And remember, reawaken simply, it doesn't mean that you're changing into something else. It just simply means that you're remembering who you truly are and that you always were that, at least from an Elven perspective. It's metaphorical rather than literal. However, it's important to realize that not every old soul has a working connection with their soul. After undergoing a process of spiritual awakening, it's common to become so absorbed in the suffering of the world and other personal issues that a connection to the soul is lost again. While the old soul may be aware of a profoundly divine presence within them and existence, they are not always able to sustain that connection. And very often, this is known as the dark night of the soul. I've been through that many times myself. But before we go into this any further, how did I come about this subject in the first place? Well, as I said, I've had a number of listeners and viewers on the YouTube channel, ask questions about this. I just recently got a question. Can people be a combination of elven, fae, and other kin? Can they be genetically all sorts of, a melting pot of all sorts of different kinds of beings? And while that might be true, I mean, you can go back in your ancestry and, certain cultures seem to have certain ties stronger with certain other kins than others. I mentioned to her that my main emphasis is the soul. I really don't care what a genetic heritage is because that's just something that you may have been born with, but it's what you do with your life. It's kind of like what I talk about with astrology. And don't get me wrong, I'm all for astrology. I think it has value. For me, it is a snapshot of when I was born, kind of hey, here's where you're at, and here's where you might want to go with this, that type of thing. But for me, I don't use it on a daily basis. It was great for the moment I was born, but I believe that we are capable of moving past what that was, past of what we were. For example, I'm defined as a Pisces. Well, looking at the past history of myself, I certainly seem to fit the Pisces, the dreamer, the poet, the writer, all those types of things. But I think that over time we outgrow that. If we're meant to continue to grow into new phases. And I think that's the way it is with our soul as well. While genetics may have a small part to play in things, in the end, you are here to learn. You are here to grow and to share and to become that soulful spirit, to advance yourself and then take that in the service of others. And so I don't really care about the genetics. I care about your spirit, your soul, and where that's going. So I've had these questions come to me, and so I told her that I think the soul is far more important. That the genetics is just a drop in the bucket of who you are, and it's what is in the soul. So part of my contemplations about how did I ever end up with the old soul, belief. Over the years, I've known about old souls for obviously a very long time, but I didn't always come to terms with it until I started looking at why does it appear? Because I'm a very big believer in justice and that what is just in the universe. And I believe in the long run that things are just. And a lot of people will say, well, life isn't fair. Well, it's not that life isn't fair. It's how you approach it. And that life is just simply life, and it's what you do with it is up to you. But I did notice that a lot of people throughout history and throughout their lives today seem to be very blessed. And I know we can say that karma has a big part of that. Absolutely true. I understand that. We all have our different paths to take and different karma to work out. But some people just seem to have certain gifts. There are those that are gifted with amazing intellect or an ability to write poems that will move people to tears or to laughter. There are people that are able to paint incredible pictures, and other people who can debate well, and who have others with vast instinctive or intuitive abilities. There are those that just seem to be natural empaths, that they can connect with others. And I imagine a lot of you out there are probably going, yeah, I understand that, how that feels. Well, if I believe in a just universe, that in the end, it may not appear that way in the beginning, but in the end, everything is just. You know, Gandhi made a comment one time, a beautiful comment. He said, it may seem for a while that evil wins out, but in the long run, truth, love does win. And it's the same with fairness in the universe. It does win out, but it's up to you to accept it or not, and to accept those gifts. So I thought over the years, how can this person have these gifts and another one just seem to not have any of these opportunities? How this person over here can be so aware of what's going on in the world, not just on a physical or political or cultural level, but an instinctive, intuitive level, what's happening in the world, and they're aware of it, and their heart can feel it, and they're empathic. And then there's these people over here that have no concept whatsoever what's going on. They can't literally see beyond their nose, and barely that. As I mentioned before, so many of my patients would come into the clinic, and they just would not see that they were the cause of their illnesses. They just could not accept that. They couldn't accept that their past actions had so much to do with why they're sick today. It always starts in the soul, and then it manifests in the physical. So, and I know for a lot of the people, and I've had these long discussions with patients over the decades, if they were to accept what I'm saying is true, then they would have to accept that a huge part of their life they were living outside of the truth, falsely, that they would have to take responsibilities for their past actions. They would have to accept that they were wrong in their perception of what life is really all about. And for most, not a few, but for most, that's just too much. It's too much for them to accept that they would have to accept responsibility for what they did and for their actions and for being where they're at today. So such vastly different people. And if I look at the universe as something fair, then I have to go, there's something more to this. Why does this person get all the great spiritual gifts and these over here are completely clueless to it? And my conclusion I eventually came to was the only thing I could say, there were only two choices for me. And the choice was pretty obvious, but there were only two choices. Either the universe is nothing but a pool of algae that got hit by lightning billions of years ago, and everything is purely just an accident, and there is really no meaning to it beyond the actual taking of a breath and enjoying the sunset. But after that, there's nothing else. There's just nothing to it. It was all just an accident. Or that there truly is such a thing as a higher divine source, that is what we are a part of, and that we are all here in this wonderful learning game, and that we are all growing and we're changing, and we all have the same opportunities. We all have the same freedom and the fairness of it, but it's our choice. Fair is, do I take advantage of the opportunities presented to me, or do I sit and pout and get upset and stamp my feet, or I could just accept it, all right? So I came to the conclusion that, yes, there are indeed such a things as the soul age, that there are young souls and there are old souls, and that there are a lot of souls in between. And the old souls simply means, in my view, those that have delved the longest, who have studied the longest, who have grown the longest. And maybe it means those who have come back more times, who have, because I believe that it is always your choice to come back. And it's scary to come back for a lot of people. And we're going to define what that really is. What is each level of the soul? And maybe you can figure out where you're at. But maybe it's simply that old souls are simply those that have come back more often and have worked the hardest on it. I saw this on the web quite a number of years ago, and I'm not sure where they got this information from, but it did feel right to me. It said, as far as the population of souls on the world today, that this is actually considered a very young soul world. That, again, I don't know where they got this from, but again, it feels right, that they came to the conclusion that probably about only 10% of the souls that are currently manifesting on this world will be what you consider old souls. And the rest are in varying degrees, but overall, this is a pretty young world that's got a lot to work out. All right, before I get into detail about how this relates to our Elven side, to how, from the Elven perspective, let's kind of take a step back and let's define what are the supposed stages of the souls and where you might fall into there. And then I'll go ahead and give it more from an Elven perspective and maybe some things that we can do to help ourselves grow. A lot of the information I'm going to be discussing today comes from the Michael teachings. It's actually quite a fascinating site. I do agree with some of what I see on there. So these are from their descriptions of what the soul levels are. All right, so soul levels again. Metaphorically, how old is the soul? And don't get me wrong, pretty much it's very possible that all souls are of the same chronological, as far as the age of the universe, we're all the same age. But we're talking about the advancement of the individual soul, okay, in those levels. So let's do that. There's basically a bunch of levels. Here's where we're going to go. It starts off with infant level, and then baby, and then young, and mature, and old soul. And within each one of those, there's actually degrees, within it as you go through it. And according to the Michael teachings, it can take a minimum, each level can take a minimum of 7 lifetimes, but more likely around 20. But everyone is different. Some might take 100 lifetimes to get through each one. It's up to you how we get through it. So let's go ahead and talk about what that means, all right? So the infant soul, the very beginning, and it goes on to say that the fragment or essence, that soul, was just cast out of the Tao. It's raw, without experience, and is usually enmeshed in a struggle over physical survival on a very unfamiliar earth plane. Thus, the infant soul stage is one characterized by many fears. And I know that we can look at the world today and we can certainly understand that. Often there is a frightened, furtive, animal-like look in their eyes. In this stage, people are born usually into primitive, sometimes tribal conditions. The main concern for an infant soul is just simply learning how to survive. And I wanted to make this point also. So we have these multiple stages of souls. But I also think that even old souls, I think every soul that, I'm going to say mostly every soul, that comes into this world, let's say that you come into this world and you're an old soul. But when you are first born, even within that lifetime, you still work your way through those again. You work through them very, very quickly because you've already succeeded. It's kind of like in astrology, they talk about your Saturn return, which is, about every 28, 29 years. And they say that most of the original early stuff, you're just kind of getting caught up during those 29 years. You're just kind of rehashing it, reviewing all the lessons of the past and getting through it. So I can see that when I look over my life, what my first 29 years were like. And it was like I was speeding through all these lessons. And so while there are souls that get stuck in the infant soul level and the young soul and so forth, I believe that most of us, even if we're at the old soul level, during the first couple of decades of our life, we're kind of reviewing all those levels again until we get back to where we're supposed to be, and then we start doing some intensive work again. All right, so infant souls can usually learn to identify, the basic things of survival, all right? To our eyes, infant souls' lifetimes look pretty rough. They're often short. The famines, plagues, drought, flooding, hurricanes, earthquakes, tigers and bears, poisonous snakes, and combat usually cut their life short. But they're in here for these quick lessons, and then they're out again. Now, it's kind of neat on the positive side. Being so fresh from the Tao can give a mystical flavor to infant souls. They resonate closely with nature, and many times they don't even feel their individualization. They just feel this oneness with everything, especially with the family and the tribe. Okay, and the intellectual center usually doesn't become fully open in this phase because they're really more into survival. All right, so that's the infant soul. If you want more information, you can just go to michaelteachings.com, and you can read it in more detail. All right, then let's get on to baby souls. Okay, baby souls, in this process here, they begin to start exploring a little bit beyond survival. Since there is now a little experience on this earth, there's a little bit more sophistication and less fear is found in these individuals, though the world is still experienced as a scary place. Survival more or less has been worked out this time, and now they're trying to get civilized and be proud of it in time for demonstrating that you can do it right. So a baby soul is kind of like you just started taking your first steps. Not quite so much into survival, you're beginning to branch out. Structure helps baby souls feel comfortable in the world. They want to be directed and therefore seek out higher authorities who are willing to lay out clear rules for them. Absolutely, I see that today. I see that with this whole COVID facade, everything going on. There are so many people out there that rather than try to figure things out on their own, they want someone to just lay the rules out for them, and they'll follow them whatever those rules say. Okay, so again, very young, and they want to be directed and so forth. Traditions, rituals, and law and order provide a welcome sense of security to them. And that's their saying is, that's the rule, and that's what we'll do. Absolutely sounds like today. That's very often the typical thinking of a baby soul. All right. Okay, so that's again, very briefly talking about them. So let's move on to young souls. And this seems to be the majority of people today. And it goes on saying, having mastered the infinite in baby soul, issues of survival, discipline, and order, the essence meaning the soul, is now looking to see how powerful it can become in the world. Okay. Independence and the ability to get what they want out of life are the driving forces. Okay, see, now this goes back to what I talked about in previous episodes, where there's the spirit side of the coin and the soul side of the coin. The spirit is the ego. The spirit is the individual. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's the individual wanting to grow and expand as an individual to gain strength and power. That's okay. And eventually you want the soul side of the coin, the part where you start then giving that to others. All right, so at the soul stage, they're really into expanding who they are as an individual. All right. Seizing what the physical plane has to offer, vying to gain positions of prominence, power, and great wealth, causes this to become the most competitive period in the whole process of all their lifetimes. I mean, you can see this definitely with a lot of politicians and so forth. That I want to be the best, I want the power, I want the votes, and very, very much about themselves. It says those who are expressing themselves from a young soul perspective will tend towards a sort of tape measure mentality that makes them monitor who among them has the highest investments, the most lavish parties, the most important friends, the greatest weekly aerobic workout, the tallest buildings. It goes on and on and on. And we, of course, know a lot of people like that. You know, it's all about me and how great me is, that type of thing. All right. It says Japan is now an example par excellence of this as an extremely competitive, focused society where even having fun looks competitive. And often there's no time off on the way up. And, of course, the suicide rate in Japan is one of the highest in the world. So sum it all up, that ambition is one of the most important attitudes for them. And it is, there's you and there's me, and I'm going to win. That's a young soul. That really defines it very, very well. Okay, the next level that we go to is mature souls. All right. By the end of the young soul phase, an uneasiness arises that something is amiss. All the wealth and power and acclaim aren't quite enough. Profits and winning no longer have transcendental value. And that happens in a lot of our current lives. You know, we get those Mustangs, we get those great jobs, and we notice that after a few decades of that, it's like, you know what, I'm still not happy. What's wrong? I thought this was the answer to this is what I told would make me happy. Goes, this thus begins the search of the mature soul period. The questions, who am I? Why am I here? Are asked with frequency in these lives. They begin to look at it. That becomes more predominant than the competitive spirit they had before. These are trying, intense times. The emotions open up. Boundaries between people break down. Seeing another person's point of view becomes possible as people become more deeply immersed in relationship issues, in other words. They're stepping outside of themselves and are starting to look at the world around them, not just from their central perspective. Suddenly it's clear everybody has feelings, and these feelings are usually either interesting or unavoidable. One of the reasons young souls are able to direct so much energy towards success is that their inner lives aren't calling for attention. That was important. And I've said this before. So this is a great example. Young souls are so self-involved. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It is a stage, I believe, that most of us go through in existence, just like watching a little child grow up. They're going to go through that terrible twos. It's all about me. Well, a lot of souls are still stuck in the terrible twos, and they haven't worked their way out of it yet. But eventually they can, over lifetimes, and begin to look outside themselves and go, there's more to this world than just me. All right? So in the mature period, it's a big stir-up, a big introspective time. There's more emotional settings here, more intensity. But we can even see more schizophrenia, more pain, more suicides, more love, more sensuality, and probably more drugs to intensify it all than in any other period. From an Elven perspective, it's like I was mentioning before, when we begin to awaken, and that usually means by then that we're usually mature or older souls, when we begin to awaken, all of a sudden we're like, oh my gosh, I've lived a horrendous life. Oh my gosh, this world is horrible. Oh my gosh, in Australia a year or so ago, 480 million animals died in the fires. Oh my gosh, that many animals die in the world every 2 days because people are doing factory farming and killing all these animals. And people become, once you begin to awaken, you can become incredibly overwhelmed with the pain and sorrow of what's going on. And sometimes it becomes too much, and they will retreat back again a little bit more towards the younger soul because they're just trying to escape right now because it's too overwhelming. And it's sad because if you can take a step back and go, wait a minute, I can only do what I can do. I can only do what I can from at least my corner of the world. And if I can't do anything now more than just heal myself, that's okay, and there doesn't have to be any guilt to that. It's not a me generation kind of thing. It's me going, remove the beam out of my own eye before I remove the mote out of someone else's. Heal so that I can then go out and heal others. It's okay. It's not something to feel guilty about. When I'm ready, I will be able to go out and help others. And if I can't save the world, maybe I can help a few out here in this corner of the world. Maybe I can make compassionate choices for my diet or how I build or who I buy from, where I spend my money. You know, vote with your wallet. There are things that we can all do. All right? So it can be difficult for us. And so, like I've told you before, we can take a step back, meditate, and just give ourselves a break and forgive ourselves and move on. Okay, but some other neat things, again, during the mature stage, creativity begins to flow. Philosophy and art begin to come into prominence. Illusion and the distortion of reality are inevitable as a person opens up, because there's really just not a clear path or an easy way to sort through all these feelings. Unfortunately, in this world, you might be taught how to do your ABCs, and you might be taught how to do math and punctuation, but rarely ever is anyone ever taught how to go introspective without guilt, and to look at yourself with honesty, and to help you, to give you the tools to sort through all your feelings. That's just rarely ever taught today. And it's a shame, because how many people could grow faster if they could just get through that. Okay, and last but not least on the definitions is, let's talk real briefly about old souls, and then we're going to talk about this more from an Elven perspective. On a deeper inner level, old souls seem to perceive the interrelatedness existing amongst all people, all beings, not just all people, all beings, that we're really all connected, we're all one. Intuitively, the old souls sense that they are a part of an integral whole. Grasping this big picture, old souls then do their best to live by it and not to harm or judge others. I guess that's why they say only about 10% of humans on this world are old souls. There is a strong urge to be impeccable and to maintain personal integrity in all transactions. They detach from the emotional intensities of the mature soul period and get more objective about the ups and downs in life. It's like, it's okay. It all works out, is how we begin to look at it. Having dozens of lifetimes in varieties of cultures and classes thoroughly blended into their essences, it is much more difficult for old souls to get embroiled in the whole concept of right and wrong, us and them games that people in countries both play. We don't get so attached to right and wrong, or you and me, because we know that that is such a subjective view, that what you might think is right or wrong is not what I do, and that it's just words. Seeing the whole picture in this way makes old souls calmer, more peaceful, and centered. It can also make them appear passive or weak to the other soul ages, when it's really not passive or weak. It's just, I'm calm and I'm okay with it. While old souls do not tend to grow into their full soul perceptivity until around the age of 35 or so. And remember what I said. Get through that first Saturn return, about 29 years. Okay, you start to begin to notice for the old souls that they begin to start acting like old souls around 35 years or so of age. An old soul, in this case, then, is a person who feels much older than their age reflects. Again, 35 years old or so, and they just don't feel it. This feeling is often accompanied by the gift of empathy, high intelligence, intuition, and keen insight into the human condition. And one of the most common things I see that comes out when you just start awakening to, I'm different than others, and I don't want to get involved in all their drama. They'll even appear then to be accused of stepping to the beat of a different drummer. Henry David Thoreau, Ralph Waldo Emerson, they talked about these type of things. Playing to the beat of a different drummer, because that is one defining characteristic I have noticed amongst old souls. A lack of conformity. Now, where others are telling you got to do what everyone else is doing, and again, remember, that's more of a young soul and baby soul type thing. You're supposed to do what everybody else is supposed to be doing. We're supposed to go by the law. We're supposed to go by the cultural conventions. Old souls tend to step out of that and begin to accept who they are, and definitely step to the beat of a different drummer. They are unusual. Usually 2 steps away from the norm. I have absolutely been accused of that in this young soul culture, because they are inclined to be individualistic and they follow their own inner perceptions and desires. They may be seen as eccentric, though usually harmlessly so. That's how people would look at them. Oh, they're so eccentric and they're cute, but they are a little strange, but they're not hurting anybody. While there is a great motivation for spiritual growth, Motivation tends to be lacking when it comes to developing political or material punch. So the motivation is to grow. By old soul time, we realized a little bit more about the truth of reality, a little bit more about who we are, our inner nature, and we become, while we might have a ton of passion and a ton of energy for growth, we don't put it into the ego. We don't put it into the cultural norms, material possessions, material growth, political growth, things of that nature. Seldom, and for old souls, seldom doing anything they don't want to do and preferring their own unconventional pursuits. They often seek the path of least resistance as far as work is concerned, so that all of their energy can be poured into spiritual development. Because of the soul's richness gathered over many lifetimes, the old souls tend to be extremely competent in a wide range of things, which, again, aren't often pursued. They will try to find work that supports their personal growth. Counseling, being a counselor, teacher, doing body work, gardening, carpentry, are some of the favorites. Being a healer of some type, whether it's a doctor like myself or Reiki or whatever. They prefer that, yeah, okay, I know, I'm on the physical plane, I need to work. But I'm going to work at something I enjoy doing that fulfills my soul instead of doing something that just seems to numb me, which is much more in the baby or the young soul stages. A lot of us can, I know, empathize with that. Another common characteristic with old souls is the ability to experience agape, and that means unconditional love. This is much, much more common in old souls, where they've come to learn that, again, we are all one and are able to love all beings unconditionally, not asking them to change for them. So think about that for yourself. How close you come to being able to love someone or something else just for who it is, with no expectations on it. So I'm going to go ahead and give you a few of what are considered some of the most common attributes or signs of an old soul. These obviously are very much connected with the Elven nature with you. But also please keep in mind, this is the same as first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, the levels of the souls. A fifth grader is not better than a fourth grader. A mature soul or an older soul is not better than an infant or a young soul or a baby soul. We are all at different stages of growing. You were once there, and maybe you'll be somewhere else later. So we're all the same. All right. Some attributes that kind of tell you whether you're an old soul. All right. Okay, you have a preference for solitude. Okay, again, that doesn't mean you're lonely, but are comfortable with aloneness. You're comfortable with being with others, but you're also comfortable with your own mind, your own voice. You're very sensitive and empathetic, or empathic. Absolutely. I've noticed this with many, many throughout the years, that they become very sensitive to others' feelings and can actually feel their emotions. That's a double-edged sword, I know. And part of being an older soul is learning to discern the difference between what they're feeling and you're feeling, and not to become overwhelmed in theirs, but to just be a mirror. You also have a profound understanding of human nature and the nature of other beings as well. And again, that comes from being sympathetic, sensitive, and empathic. You also have the ability, and this is so true, to be deeply introspect. You think a lot within yourself about things. You also can experience a lot of psychological tiredness. I know that's going to ring true with a lot of you out there. Because you can be so sensitive to others, it can wear you out. And those out there that act like psychic vampires can wear you down if you let them in, if you accept their gifts of fear and hostility. Okay, you find that you're very disinterested in worldly achievements or status. Again, you don't care to be a CEO of a major company or a successful politician. You're more interested in spiritual growth achievements. And there again, you have an inclination towards spirituality. It's the inside that matters to you more than the outside. You also tend to have a more mystical approach. Isn't that interesting that the infant soul gets very mystical because they're so in touch with nature? And just like the circle of life, by the time you get back, you get to the older soul, you're right back to wanting to be in touch with nature itself. And again, you're right back to being mystical. Okay, and I think we're about done there. You have a thirst for truth and wisdom. If you're an old soul, you will likely feel alienated in society. Again, different drummer, not a conformist. But you'll also be able to live a truly unique and meaningful life. There are blessings and curses that accompany this way of being, but most of all, I hope you know that you're not alone and that there are others just like you. All right? And part of our work here is you're here to break the cycle, to break out of whatever habits and karma you have, and to be able to move on. All right? And to learn to explore yourself. And in so doing, you're able to contribute to somebody else's mission, and that's a wonderful thing because your true purpose may be much larger than life. All right, and a few more points, and then we're going to wrap up this half of the show and get ready for the open mic. A few more pointers. Remember, there is no such thing as a truly safe relationship until there's safety from within. Within each new relationship, there's a risk of vulnerability. Risk is intrinsic to intimacy, but the growth is inevitable. And as an older soul, as you head towards there, you learn how precious that is. Being compassionate, being empathetic, being empathic doesn't mean you have to be anyone's emotional punching bag. It often means being your own guru and setting your healthy boundaries. All right, the ability to enjoy being alone is a superpower. It's okay. And also, abundance and miracles are your birthright. This is part of what you're growing towards, is to learn how to manifest those beautiful things in your life. And as your soul grows older, you learn to do those more. Big dreams accelerate and come to life precisely when you're willing to give up the resistance to what could be rather than how you think they should be. All right? So I think that will just about wrap it up. I'm going to end this half of the show with a audio clip I played before, but it's so apropos to this because, again, back to what I just said, you are in the great learning game. You're in school, in a wonderful school, a school of otters, a school of elves. You're here to learn and play and grow and share and help others along the path as well. So you're going to go from each soul level, each grade as you go along. But remember that as you progress along, there's nothing that you have to feel guilty about. You learn and move on and learn from those past mistakes, if you want to call them mistakes, those previous challenges. It's okay that when you start to awaken and you look back and go, what have I been doing with my life? Remember, you've been doing this many times. You've done it before. It's okay. But as long as with each time you learn something new and then let go of the past, it's all baby steps. And baby steps are good. That's how you learn to walk as you reawaken. And on that note, with this clip, this is from Contact with Jodie Foster, my favorite part of this, and it's about baby steps.
You're an interesting species, an interesting mix. You're capable of such beautiful dreams and such horrible nightmares. You feel so lost, so cut off, so alone. Only you're not. See, in all our searching, the only thing we've found that makes the emptiness bearable is each other.
What happens now?
Now, you go home.
Home? But I have so many questions. Do we get to come back?
This was just the first step. In time, you'll take another.
But other people need to see what I've seen. They need to see.
This is the way it's been done for billions of years. Small moves, Ellie. Small moves.
We're going to go ahead and take a short station break right now, and then when we get back, we'll be taking callers for our Chatting with the Elven Scholar. This is Elven Awakenings, Chatting with the Elven Scholar on Heroes and Mortals Radio. We'll be right back. When you go to college, you expect the high halls and libraries filled with old books. But much has changed, and in today's world, online schools have exploded in popularity. Please join us at Lambengolmor, the world's first online college with a nod towards Elven and humankind alike. With Lambengolmor, you can start a new career or a new life in the holistic health field. Learn a new Elven language, study history and culture or the environment. We believe everyone deserves an affordable education with personalized attention. We provide full certifications in the following fields: home herbalist, Reiki levels 1 through Reiki master, nutritionist, first aid, Elven history and culture, Elven languages, Quenya and Sindarin, anatomy, botany, introduction to archaeology, ecology, astronomy, and Elven laws of manifestation and meditation. We also offer full diplomas in the fields of medical herbalist and medical nutritionist. More classes are being added. Many students have already found new careers in these fields. You can pay for your classes outright or join a low-cost monthly subscription which allows you to take as many classes as you like at one time while you maintain the subscription. This college was founded to give you a chance to expand your horizons while believing in who you are. All classes are certified and are aimed at helping you start a new life and a new career. Adult study programs for both elves and humans alike, designed specifically for you. You can find us at www.elvenscholar.org. Discover what is inside of you. Be who you are at Lambengolmor, the Elven School of Lore Masters. All right, we're back, and I'm going to go ahead and open the mic up, so anybody that would like to call with a question or some comments, please feel free to do so. You can get us at 442-227-2187. That's 442-227-2187, or I will be monitoring the email during the rest of the broadcast at radio@elvenscholar.org. Radio@elvenscholar.org, ELVENSCHOLAR.org. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get some announcements out of the way here. I've got quite a few announcements I'd like to make. And also, I talk pretty much lately, each episode I like to talk about some of my favorite characters that were on Lord of the Rings because of some of the, I guess, the spiritual message that can come about from them. So one of my favorites, again, is Bill the Pony. Absolutely love Bill the Pony. Who better to have been associated with than Samwise? Both symbols of loyalty and unconditional love. We just talked about agape. How much better could you get than Samwise and Bill the Pony? So anyway, Bill the Pony is my favorite on as far as the animals there are concerned. All right. Let's get some announcements out of the way so that we can go ahead and talk about it a little bit more. Okay, so wanted to go ahead and talk about some upcoming shows that we've got here in the next few weeks. One of the most important ones is next week. I'm very excited. We have an interview with science fiction author Gregory Current. He is the author of the book Cradle of Destiny. It's book 1 of the Saarian Legacy series. You can actually get the book on Amazon right now. Awesome book. We'll be interviewing Greg next week on next week's show, December the 19th. I definitely liken him to Frank Herbert with the Dune series. So apropos that just around the time that Dune came out, the new movie. So I hope you can tune in next week and hear Greg's take on it all and how he became an author, very important for elves, and how he succeeded at that, and what his book's all about. Very exciting. I've got the book myself. It's one of my favorites in my library.
All right. Also, some of the upcoming shows. We've got quite a few exciting shows coming up this month as well as for January and February. Here's just a small list of what we're going to be doing. Later on in the next few weeks, we've got an interview with an actual Elven botanist. He is a trained and degreed botanist who lives the Elven lifestyle, and we're going to be interviewing him for the show and how he continues as a botanist, as a scientist, but also living from an Elven perspective. We're also going to be talking about, and this was encouraged from a listener quite some time ago, from an Elven perspective, who is God? Who is God, and what is, and from our perspective, how do we define God? That's a very exciting show. I've really enjoyed doing those types of shows. Also, in the future, we're going to be talking about, I already did a YouTube channel, on my YouTube channel, Elven Scholar, I did a video of this, and it's really exciting. You are but a note in the cosmic music, the song of life, and I actually will show you scientific evidence about the Elven music that permeates the universe and how you are truly, biologically, genetically, a note in the song of life. Absolutely amazing. You'll actually get to hear some of it as well. This has been requested multiple times with the school that we run, the Elven School Lambengolmor. We're going to be starting this class up eventually, but I'm going to go ahead and do a radio show on it, how to run an Elven business for financial freedom. This is not quite such a spiritual show, that episode, but one that is very practical, day to day. How can we start our own business for financial freedom? As I mentioned earlier about, the mature souls and especially the older souls, we don't really want to work at just the average job there that sometimes seem to be such a soul-sucking job, which doesn't allow for our spiritual growth. So how can you, as an Elven or Fae or otherkin, start and run your own business for the freedom to be able to continue the search for your inner nature? We're also going to be talking about the love of elves for stars and trees and the earth. That'll be a good show. Another one is elves and karma. What is the relationship between the Elven nature, our Elven spirit, and karma, and how does it affect us? Another show which I very much enjoy doing, I've done a YouTube video on this as well, is living as an elf in today's world. Remember I just said that sometimes older souls can seem eccentric, so we're going to have a bit of an eccentric story when we do that one. Also, finding balance in a non-Elven world, how you can find balance and still be who you want to be, to hear your own inner calling and to go forth with it and not let other people stop you from doing that. Another show is going to be on Elven evolution. Where did we come from? And I actually have some interesting evidence behind where the whole concept of the Elven being came from, our Elven souls, and how this came to be in this world. Going to be talking about Elven diet. That one's probably going to stir up some feelings and things that people may not like to hear, and some people will enjoy hearing it. But Elven diet, how we can clean up our bodies and live a more compassionate life. We're going to be doing a show right at the new year. The new year, new beginnings. Learn to start your new Elven life. That'll be an episode coming up here in just about 3 weeks. And another one exciting, this was actually recommended by my wife, Famist, Escaping the World of Illusion and Living Your True Elven Nature. I know that can be hard for a lot of people because we are surrounded by so much illusion, but you can just let it go. And a very gentle show that'll be coming up in probably around January is The Spiritual Path of Tom Bombadil. All right, so we're going to be talking about Tom Bombadil. Some people actually theorize and say that he was actually God. So we'll talk about who Tom Bombadil might have been and how to live your life more like he did. All right. So, all right. Next thing, I just wanted to announce it probably one more time before the holidays. I've talked about it a couple of times, is the Silmarillion Book Club coming up. This is a Zoom book club that pretty much will be about every Saturday morning or afternoon, depending on where you live. And it's hosted by Sean McKinsey, a wonderful Elven brother. He's in Canada, and he just finished the book club for Lord of the Rings. Took 2 years to get through it, and it is a Zoom meeting that happens about every Saturday. It will be starting January 8th. 2022, and like I said, it'll be a Zoom meeting. It's wonderful. It lasts about an hour and a half, just about every Saturday. And it's like I said, it's not just sitting there reading from it, but it covers every chapter throughout the span of the club, and it's very lively. It's full of debate and asking questions and sharing interpretations. It's very exciting. Okay, and you can get him, and again, when I repost this on YouTube, I will put these 2 links in there. You can get him if you'd like to find out more information about the book club. You can get him at mckinseyshawn7@gmail.com. That's McKinseyshawn Sean at gmail.com, or at tolkiengrace.weebly.com. All right, and again, I'll put these links in the YouTube description when this is reposted later today. All right, and this is one more announcement, and I think I've just about got it done. And that for next Sunday, so that is December 19th, right? Yeah, December 19th, a new show is coming up. This show is, again, Elven Awakenings, Chatting with Elven Scholar, and shortly after this show, starting next Sunday, will be a new show called, again, on Heroes and Mortals Radio. It'll be Mythic Tales of Hope by the Elven Scholar. I will be hosting a show of tales of Elven Fae and otherkin lore and stories, again, from a distant past, along with poetry by myself and others. So please, if you have some poetry that you would like to have read on the air, please let me know. We would be happy to read it and let other people hear your poetry and your perceptions of the Elven Fae or otherkin lore. So starting next Sunday, you can go to heroesandmortalsradio.com, and you can go ahead and get more about the scheduling. New show starting, Mythic Tales of Hope by the Elven Scholar, a show of stories, parables, and poetry. All right, so I hope you enjoy that, again, starting next week. Okay, I also wanted to go ahead and fun little tidbits I'd like to put in here before we close up the show. These are little tidbits from Lord of the Rings, the movie itself, and things about did you know some of the things that were happening then? All right, and this was an interesting one. A lot of people don't know this, that the Hobbit actors had to cry for almost 3 days for this one particular scene. Because of on-set accidents, cameras, going unfocused for a whole shoot, Sean Astin forgetting to put on his waistcoat after a lunch break, the Hobbit actors had to film that horribly heart-wrenching scene of their goodbyes when Frodo and Bilbo were leaving at the end of the show. They had to film it 3 separate days, 3 times, and had to cry over and over again because the scene's technical difficulties and other difficulties kept going wrong. That would be a toughie, but anyway, they did. Did you know that the Nazgul screeches were made with plastic cups? This noise is known to torment the characters in the series, the screaming of the Nazgul. The sound crew was able to produce this sound by recording the noises of plastic cups being scraped together. This incredibly simple trick created one of the most iconic sound effects in movie history by scraping plastic cups together. That was really interesting. And one more, did you know? And this was Friends with Fur. This is Viggo Mortensen, Aragorn, formed such a strong bond with the horse he rode on set, all right, the one that was named Brego, that he purchased him from the owners once the filming was wrapped up. He also purchased another horse from the set so that his first horse would have a friend. That's one way of thanking Brego for saving him from the river after the Warg Rider fight. So that's pretty neat that he loved him so much that I guess they ended up with a pretty tight bond. And he bought him and then got him a friend as well. That's pretty neat. All right, so I think that will about wrap it up for now. For that, we're going to go on, take a short break, and then we're going to go ahead and do a story time and final thoughts. So again, this is, I look forward to talking to you again more next week. Like I said, we're still going to go into story time, but I look forward to talking next week. Please remember that next week is going to be our interview with Gregory Current, the author of A Cradle of Destiny, a wonderful science fiction writer. I've known him for quite a number of years. All right, so okay, let's move on then.
Deep in the forest is a place filled with artifacts of an age gone by, a time when Elven and fairies and all those of other kin knew who they were and remembered our mythic past. It is our pleasure here at Elven Artifacts to present some of those memories. With the rising cost of so many things today, it is becoming harder to find those precious gifts that pass along an air of myth and magic to our homes and to our individual lifestyles. Within this store, you may find that one particular treasure that reminds you of your gentler past, something to help grace your home with our memories. It is our goal to keep everything priced in such a way that makes it available to as many of our gentler folk as we can. Through the magic of 3D printing, we are able to offer them at a greatly reduced price. We are including Elven, Fairy, D&D, and other kin products such as statues, wall plaques, bathrooms, kitchenwares, musical instruments, smartphone accessories, clothes, and so much more. In keeping with our Elven traditions, all items are made from eco-friendly biodegradable materials. The plastic is made from sugarcane and bamboo. You're also welcome to customize your own artifacts. One of the most important features of this store is the ability that allows you to customize an item. You can have your name written in your language or in Elven, and even customize the images placed on the items. Please let us know what you're interested in designing, and we will try and help you again at an affordable cost. So please feel free to look us up at elvenscholar.org/store, and we'll do our best to help you find those memories that remind us of our true inner nature. Namaste. Welcome to Story Time. This is going to be one of my favorite little tales I'm going to be telling you about. The name of the story is The Monk Who Would Find God. I'm actually going to take you back to Middle Earth because we're going to have a monk that travels throughout the world meeting other races in his search to find God. So the reason I'm having this story here is in the next upcoming episodes, next few, I will be answering a listener's question. Some time ago, I did a YouTube video on it, and it was in response to a listener or a viewer of the YouTube channel, and she asked if I would please explain what is God, who is God. And so I went ahead and did a video on it, and I'd like to go ahead and do a version of it for the radio show probably in the next few weeks or so. So this story is apropos to that, and I hope you like the ending. Again, The Monk Who Would Find God. There was a monk, and his name was Travail, and he was a rather young monk, but he was a hard worker and was incredibly dedicated in his studies of God and the workings of the universe. His highest dream was to find God for himself, to know who God was. And though young, he studied many, many years and very hard, and his masters were very proud of him, as he was the hardest studying student of them all. But no matter how often he studied, no matter how hard and the amount of books that he read, and he just never could find God for himself. So one day he bid farewell to his masters and to his temple, and decided that he would go out and he would find God out in the world for himself, because he could not find it in books. So off he went, and he would travel from human village to human village. And in each village he would inquire of the priest or the holy man or the holy woman there, and he would go, "Who is God? And they would say, "Ah, verily we know who God is, and we know where God lives." And he would go, "Ah, wonderful, will you please take me to God?" And in each and every case, they would take him to their particular church or temple or building. And they would walk in and go, "Behold, you are in the presence of God." And each and every time he would leave disappointed and sad that he had yet not found God, because he knew in his heart that God did not live in any building, and yet he could not find him. So he spent years traveling amongst the humans, and he never did find God. So he decided, then I will go seek amongst the other free peoples of the world. Maybe they know where God's at, because they've been studying so much longer than humans. So he inquired about where the dwarf kingdoms were, and he went off his way to find the nearest dwarf nation, and he could ask amongst them, "Where is God?" In time, his travels brought him to the first dwarf nation up in the Elven in the Blue Mountains. And he came before them and was escorted to the dwarven king himself. And he asked, "O king, thou art wise and have been on this world a very long time, much longer than myself or any of my masters. Will you please tell me, where is God? How can I find God?" And the dwarf king looked upon him and said, "Ah, I know exactly where God is. God must live where they are eternal, and that would be within the mountains and the rocks themselves, because they were here long before we were and will be here long after we are. If you seek God, find him in the core of the mountains, for surely God lives there." So for 1 year of his life, he traveled throughout the mountains, deep into the caves, underground, above ground. He climbed throughout the mountains. He went from one mountain to the next, from one dwarven village or town or kingdom to the next. And in each case, they told him the same. "Oh, verily, God lives in the mountains, for they are eternal." In the end, he never found God amongst the dwarves. So he left and went to the forests to see if he could find them there. For in the forest, the deep, deep forests of the north, live the great tree ants and the trees that still climb to the clouds. Surely they who have been around for thousands of years, they'll know where God is. They will tell me where to find God. So to the far north he traveled, seeking out the giants of the trees, the tree ants and the sequoias and the redwoods and all the giant trees that lived back in those days. Eventually, high in the mountains, he found them, towering up to the clouds themselves. And before them he went and he begged and said, "Would you please tell me, where is God?" And one of the great trees in the area bent down low and looked upon him as he was a tiny wee thing. And he said, "Lo, we know where God resides. Because we receive our nourishment from the soil, and we receive the light from the sky, God must live in both the soil and the sky. If you will but delve into the soil, put your hands deep into it and look, surely you will find God. And at night, when you lay upon the ground, look up and see the stars, because we know that's where God lives." So, another year he dedicated to his life, traveling throughout the great forests, speaking amongst them, learning their lore and their culture, digging into the dirt and looking up at the stars at night. And yet still, he never found God. He left there and thought, "I will go to the sea." I've never been there before, but I've heard that it is a great place, full of passion and violence and depths that no man has ever seen before. I will go there and I will look for God. So he traveled to the great west, and eventually he could hear the sound of the sea and he could smell the salt air, something he'd never seen before or ever smelled before. And eventually he reached the shoreline. and it was quiet, just a gentle surf rolling back and forth, and he yelled at the top of his lungs, "Where are you, God? Where is God?" For he could look as far as the eye could see, and there was just water stretching far out. There was a little boat on the side of the shore, so he thought he would grab it, and maybe that was what it would take, is to go out amongst God, find God in God's home. And out he went, and he rowed until he could no longer see the shore. And very shortly, a great wave pushed aside the water next to his boat, and up came a great white whale. And he thought, surely this whale, one of the great denizens of the sea, will know where God is. And he asked the whale, "O whale, how great thou art, will you please tell me, where is God?" And the whale, with one eye turned towards him, liquid and cool, studied him for a moment and said, "The only place we know where God would be is in the greater depths of this ocean. Deep, deep he is, colder than anything you have ever known, and darker than the night. That is where God is at." And he said, "I cannot go there. How can I find God?" And the whale went, "All I know is that that's the God of the whales, but you cannot go there." But still, he thought he would at least take a look, and he jumped off the side of the boat and tried to swim underwater and held his breath. And all he saw was more water and the occasional fish swimming by. So he grabbed up again for the side of the boat, and the whale was gone. And he rowed back to the shore, and he was so despondent. But from a distance he heard the whale rise above again and say, "If thou truly seeks God, I have heard the elves know where he's at. Go seek the elves, and you'll find God." In his journeys, he had learned that the elves were west of the mountains and east of the sea. So after many weeks' journey, he eventually made it to the Elven village and inquired of their people where were the lore masters. Without hesitation, the gentle folk took him to the lore master of the village, and he asked of them, "Where is God? Will you please tell me, where is the God of the elves? For you have been around longer than anyone else, and surely you must know where God is." "Indeed we do. We know where God is, and if you feel that you are ready, we will take you to God. Please, oh please, take me to God. I have been on such a long, long journey, and I have yet to find God." And they looked at him a little sad, but a little knowing, and went, "If you're ready, then we will take you to the cave of God." "The cave of God?" "Absolutely. In this cave, you will find God." So he agreed, and they took him on to this little cave. And at the entrance of the cave, it said, "Enter all who would see God." They said, "At this point, you must travel alone, for this is a journey only you can find for yourself." So he thanked the elves, and into the cave he went. It was barely lit, but he could see a little bit, and he noticed that it was just a single cavern. He stood for a moment, letting his eyes get used to the dark, and then he noticed at the back of the cavern was something slightly lit, and a sign at the top. As he approached the back of the cave, he saw this old wooden sign that was attached towards the top of the cave. And upon the sign was written, "Behold God." And when he looked down to see what the sign was over, all he saw was the reflection of himself in the mirror. For my final thought of the day, I was inspired by our move to Southern California. As I speak, my wife is at our Elven sanctuary in Northern California, moving all of our stuff out of it and bringing it down here with our son. As it appears, with faith, our house is sold, and it's closing here in the next less than 2 weeks. And It is a time of letting go. We have gathered over the decades a lot of different things, and I wouldn't say that we were hoarders, but we definitely gathered many interesting odds and ends. And it is a lesson in letting go, that not everything do we need any longer. No, therefore, why bring it with us? And it's interesting that the new owner would love for us to leave much of we have there for them. So it's a gift from us to them, as well as them allowing us not to have to move so much. But it's a process. I've spoken many times on this show, and I've mentioned it many, many times on my YouTube channel about needing to let go and not be attached to things. There are many, many tools in our lives that are very valuable to us for a while, but then the time comes when they're no longer valuable to us. And maybe it's time to let go and let someone else have them for a while. In our case, sometimes it's even that we're letting go of the things that are even unknown. There are probably going to be things that we leave behind that we don't even remember that we left. And there again, it's a lesson in letting go of even something you're not even aware you're letting it go. So that maybe one day we'll go, whatever happened with that? Oh, that's right. Well, obviously it was time for it to move on. Again, tools are good and useful until they're no longer useful, and it's time to let someone else have it. So I have a wonderful short tale to tell here, and it's about balance and attachments, about being willing to let go. But sometimes it's not always appropriate to let go. Sometimes we are gifted with some beautiful things that we can enjoy and treasure while it's their time to be with us. It doesn't mean we have to become attached to them or obsessed, but enjoy the gifts while they're here. And then if and when it's time to let them move on, then that's okay too. So this is an old Zen tale about balance and attachments. I hope you enjoy it. His name was Kitano Gemp. He was an abbot at Ihai Temple, and he was 92 years old when he passed away in 1933. He endeavored his whole life not to be attached to anything. A wandering mendicant, when he was 20, he happened to meet a traveler who smoked tobacco as they walked together down a mountain road. Remember, this is in the late 1800s. They stopped under a tree to rest. The traveler offered Kitano a smoke, which he accepted as he was very hungry at the time. "How pleasant this smoking is," he commented. The other gave him an extra pipe and tobacco, and they parted ways. Kitano felt such pleasant things may disturb his meditation. "Before this goes too far, I will stop now." And he threw the smoking outfit away. When he was 23 years old, he studied the I Ching, which he felt was the profoundest doctrine of the universe. It was winter at the time, and he needed some heavy clothes. He wrote his teacher, who lived about 100 miles away, telling him of his need, and gave the letter to a traveler to deliver. Well, almost the whole winter passed, and neither answer nor clothes arrived. So Kitano resorted to the prescience of the I Ching, which also teaches the art of divination. He did this to determine whether or not his letter had miscarried. He found that this had indeed been the case. His letter never arrived. A letter afterwards from his teacher, which made no mention of his clothes, soon arrived. He goes, "If I perform such accurate, determinative work with the I Ching, I may neglect my meditation," felt Kitano. So he gave up this marvelous teaching and never resorted to his powers again. When he was 28 years old, he studied Chinese calligraphy and poetry. He grew so skillful in these arts that his teacher praised him. He stated, "If I don't stop now, I'll be a poet and not a Zen teacher." So he never wrote another poem again in his life. You see, in your life, isn't it a shame that Kitano didn't give in to his urge of mastering and of enjoying life? But isn't it also beautiful that he chose non-attachment, so he saw the Zen way in life of being non-attached? Life is what you make out of it. You can stay unattached to anyone or anything, or you can live deeply and attach yourself to the fullest, to everything you enjoy, to everyone you love. Maybe the middle way is the best way here. Gautama often taught us, when it comes to attachments, that it is the middle way. Gautama Buddha came to his beliefs by first living in a very rich royal life. And when he realized that didn't work for him, he disavowed his family, disavowed the riches, and went and lived a very ascetic, very poor, impoverished life. And he did that for many, many years. And then he eventually realized that wasn't the way either. And so that's how the Buddha came up with the middle way. There's balance in everything. Love your life. Love what you do. You can do that without being attached and still live life to its fullest and enable you to pass those gifts on to someone else and bring joy and beauty to their lives. Well, okay, it's about time to sign off, so I just wanted to go ahead and remind everyone that next week we have a special episode where I will be interviewing Gregory Current, who is the author of the Saiarian Legacy series. It is a wonderful science fiction series. Book 1 is out, and I wanted to go ahead and introduce Greg to you. He's a personal friend of ours, and it's an amazing book. I personally would say that it reminds me of Frank Herbert's Dune series, and I highly encourage all of you to take a look at it. You can find it on Amazon. So we're going to be interviewing him next week. So the name of the book is The Cradle of Destiny from the Saiarian Legacy series. Yes, Greg, I pronounce it like an elf. So anyway, Cradle of Destiny, you can find it on Amazon. We'll be interviewing him next week as part of the show. So I look forward to everybody coming on back and being able to listen to the story of how Greg came up with this book and what the book is all about. Amazing book, again, comparable to the Dune series. All right. Well, thank you again for everyone listening, my friends, and until we are together again next week, may you be blessed by the elves. My name is Dr. Erindia Spindalelis, and I am the Elven Scholar. Namaste. Megavanan, and welcome to our YouTube channel, The Gentle Musings of an Elven Scholar. My name is Dr. Erindia Spindalelis, and I am the Elven Scholar. Join me on this journey exploring all things Elven. Learn about Elven culture, healing, diet, meditation, and Elven spirituality. Come and take this adventure with me, and together we can find that inner light and balance that exists within each one of us. Namaste.